Hi everyone. So today, first of all, I'm actually going to start off with the question and answer stuff, simply because it's going to go real quick this time, and it's actually kind of related to the main topic. So, first one, glad to see you back. Hopefully, going to start working out again soon. So this came at the perfect time. The thing I struggle with most is building a program to get the results I want, but thankfully someone already asked that. Do you know when you'll be covering that topic? So the answer is yes, I am going to be covering that topic now. That is going to be the topic for today's video. However, as I replied to this person in the comments, unfortunately, it's going to be more than just a single video. I think that I could probably talk for several hours about the topic of how to design a good program, and so I would rather just split that up into a few different videos, cover, a few of the major topics. This video is going to cover sort of the basics, so the basic principles that you need to understand why, you design a program a certain way, how to sort of think about designing a program so that you are in the right direction and not totally off base. And in the next few weeks, we're going to cover some more of just sort of the progression of things. So, okay, what does that mean in practical terms? What does that mean for sets and reps, and how are you going to organize things within a week, and so on. So this episode is going to be a little bit more theoretical, a little bit more sort of overview of things, but I would highly, highly, highly recommend watching this video, of course, before, skipping to the other ones if you're, maybe coming from us in the future where, all these videos are already out, simply because this is the logical starting point. So the other one, this one was actually not something that was sent to me, specifically for the topic of the videos. This is just an email that I got. So the question is, does the microwave increase estrogen and lower testosterone levels? Are there any adverse health effects of using the microwave to cook foods like eggs or warm up cooked rice? Oh man. So this is one of those things where, like, one of my very, very favorite comedy bits of all time is the bit in It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia where, they're like, oh, what happens when you burn trash? And he goes, oh, it becomes pollutant and it goes into the atmosphere and it's terrible. And Charlie goes, no, you burn it and then it turns into stardust and it goes up into space and it becomes new stars. And immediately, like, someone says, like, oh, that can't be right. And then, I can't remember if I think it's Mac, replies, like, well, it's, I don't know enough about this to say no, so it could be true, even though it's obviously quite absurd. So that's kind of the situation here. So one of the things that I think people don't really understand in a general sense is that the kinds of things that science can tell us are often very limited, especially when it comes to certain types of questions more than others. And so I think that people have this sort of, this misnomer that science has got all these very precise answers to all these, very, very precise questions, and not that it has, something more like what it really has, which is just sort of a very general understanding of what tends to work and what doesn't. And of course, individual variation is huge. But at the end of the day, the question of, okay, is using the microwave going to cause adverse health effects? I would so highly doubt it. Like, until until some studies are done specifically on that topic, and I don't know, maybe they have. I haven't bothered to look. But this is the kind of question that, like, based on what we know in a general sense, it seems very unlikely that there would be virtually any ill effect from it. Sort of the biggest problem that we have in terms of the way that we cook food and whether or not that has negative health effects is basically just that if you overcook food, if you burn it, then, sort of that char is a little bit carcinogenic. And so eating, a lot of burnt, overcooked food over time is going to be bad for you. Now, at the same time, like, is there something uniquely damaging about microwaves? I don't know. Probably not. It's literally just a heat wave. Like, it's just a wave heating it. Does it increase estrogen and lower testosterone levels? I can say almost definitively not, because that kind of stuff is more determined by sort of your internal body chemistry and what your body is doing at a given time versus what you eat. Yes, there are ways to influence your estrogen and testosterone levels based on what you eat, but that's not, it's very, very unlikely that microwaving is going to have some kind of impact on foods that's going to magically make them, mess with your hormones or something like that. So this is one of those questions where, again, I can't really, maybe there is some research out there that contradicts me on this, but this, seems like a bit of a silly question. I don't mean to be insulting to the person who's asked, because of course there is so much bullshit out there. All these dumb articles that'll say that the secret to health is, eating a pear, but it has to be like cooked in a certain way or some, like there's all this weird stuff out there about nutrition that's basically either wrong or just so misleading as to be more damaging than helpful in the long run anyway, even if it's not quite wrong. So that covers the Q&A for today. I'm going to go ahead and jump right into the main topic, which is just the basic principles of lifting. How do you design a program? Sort of how do you think about a program? How do you think about the exercise that you're doing in the gym and how it, sort of gets results for you? So to get started, basically, sort of we need to think about the way that exercise in a general sense affects our body. So you go to the gym, you exercise, that creates a kind of stimulus, and that stimulus is negative. It basically, hurts your body because, of course, you've damaged your muscles a little bit. You've really tired yourself out. It's sort of disrupted your normal, way of doing things, your body's normal homeostasis. So you get that stimulus in from that exercise, and that stimulus initially weakens you. So again, muscles damaged a little bit, you're tired, you're exhausted, you are actually less strong because you've just, done this workout, or you're less able to continue doing the workout after you're done. And then your body, you go to sleep over the course of the next few days. Your body recognizes, okay, there was this negative stimulus, it didn't destroy you, but you need to adapt to be better able to handle that kind of negative stimulus in the future. And so what happens is that your body then adapts, it improves, above its former level, and then you're more ready to handle exercise in the future. So you recover, you get better, and then you do the same thing again. And ideally, you're kind of chaining these workouts together in a way that you continue to increase that sort of upward trend of your body continuing to adapt and get better and get stronger and get more ready for whatever demands it is that you're putting through it. And so this applies to basically every kind of exercise. So if you're training to get stronger, you lift some heavy weights, your body says, okay, I need to, get ready to lift more heavy weights because that seems to be a demand that we have on this body. And so, your body adapts and it gets a little bit stronger and you can handle a little bit heavier weights. So to kind of go into a couple of, sort of theoretical models about how this works, kind of the traditional model that a lot of people used for a long time is Seeley's General Adaptation Syndrome model, or it's also called GAS. So the idea of GAS is sort of similar to the way in which, sort of the body reacts to a poison or any kind of negative stimulus. So again, kind of like I described, you're at homeostasis. You go into that alarm stage, which is basically that you're getting a little bit worse. This is sort of, you're in your workout, you're getting a little bit more tired. There's that sort of resistance stage where your body is, okay, it's adapting to meet that need. It's sort of overworking itself to fit that need. And then there's a phase where if you continue to push it, a little bit too long, then you'll get into the exhaustion stage, which basically just means that your body starts to give out. So if you're working out for too long, then eventually you're going to, just hurt yourself, or you're going to get to a point where you just can't do much more of a workout, or the kind of workout that you can do is going to be sort of weak or ineffective simply because you've been working out for so long to begin with. So the problem with this model is that, again, this model is sort of adapted from a model that was really designed more to describe the way that your body reacts to noxious stimuli, to things like poisons, to things like injury. And so, exercise is not exactly like that. And it really, this sort of model is a little bit simplistic when it comes to sort of understanding the ways in which, people's bodies do things. So the more accurate model, which is more frequently in use now, so the more accurate model that's a lot more in use now is what we call the fitness fatigue model. So this model is a little bit different, and it actually more accurately describes sort of the way that your body does things in response to exercise. So instead of simply seeing it sort of the way that the general adaptation syndrome model does, where it's just a single, it's a single line, it's a single variable, but that doesn't quite make sense because it doesn't fully explain, we don't get stronger in response to exercise, in a very short span of time. That happens over a longer period of time, and you have to recover before you do that. And this just sort of covers, where is recovery in this? It doesn't really explain the whole thing. So the fitness fatigue model basically sees that your performance is sort of the sum of two different factors. One of them is your fitness, and the other one is your fatigue. And so what happens is you can kind of see at the beginning of the graph here where, everything is sort of the same. This is before your workout. You get your workout in, you've increased your fatigue, so now you're actually, performing worse in this area simply because, even though you've gotten a little bit more fit, you have a lot of fatigue that's sort of masking or covering up that performance. And then, over the next few days, your fatigue begins to recover a little bit. And at this point, your performance begins to, basically shoot over its, former levels. And so you can kind of see here how it makes a lot more sense. It really describes the way that people's bodies actually, adapt to things over a long period of time. And then here, what you have is, this is the peak of your performance where your fatigue is minimized. And then if you were to go a few more days without working out, then you would see things start to return to baseline. So if you just did one workout and, that's it, then this model, this picture, this whole picture here would be sort of the whole thing. That's all there is to say. But of course, that's not what we do. We do more than one workout. So what happens is that you do more than one workout, and you tend to see that over time, instead of there simply being a single, version of this graph, you can imagine multiple versions of this graph. And that over time, you're gonna get a little bit better, you're gonna work out again, you're gonna get a little bit better, you're gonna work out again, you're gonna get a little bit better, and so on. So, the idea here is basically that you have this stimulus, you temporarily get a little bit worse, you recover, you have this adaptation, and then you repeat that cycle again and again and again and again. So sort of one of the topics that a lot of people don't really understand is what we call the principle of specificity. So the principle of specificity says that sort of a major part of this whole adaptation cycle is that you have to be doing the same thing over and over again. And that makes sense. So, basically, if I'm doing something like, I do a bench press, and then I recover and I, improve a little bit at the bench press. And then, I don't do the bench press again. Maybe I do, a push-up. Well, that's it. It's still working out the same muscles, but it is a different stimulus. So, there's going to be another one of those curves, but it's not quite going to be the same thing. Your body's not quite going to adapt to it in the same way. Now let's say that the next time, instead of doing, a push-up, I'm doing something like a bicep curl. Well, now this is a totally different sort of lift. There may be a little bit of carryover to something like the bench press, but, not much at all. And then let's do something like, say, running. So, I'm going for a run. Well, that's, it's just totally different. I'm using different muscles, I'm using different energy systems and so on. So, you're basically getting nothing for the bench press out of going for a run. There might be some edge cases where there's, maybe your energy systems are really weak and going for a run actually improves your bench press, but that would be someone who's very detrained and, it's not something that would happen very often is sort of the main point. So when you are training, the idea is not just that you are working out regularly, but you are repeating the same workouts. So you're doing the same sort of workouts over and over again. And then each time you do it, you're doing a little bit harder. You're increasing that, that stress a little bit. You're getting a little bit more adaptation and so on. So what this means is that within sort of this example here, okay, I'm doing the bench press, I'm recovering, I'm doing the bench press again, I'm recovering, I'm doing the bench press again, and so on. So you can already see how sort of a lot of these, these programs that are, really focused on what they call muscle confusion, where they're just constantly doing different things and there's not really any consistency in terms of, what they're doing, that violates the principle of specificity. And those kinds of workouts can be good at sort of getting a baseline level of fitness and sort of burning calories, and maybe they're good for weight loss, but they're not necessarily going to be good in the long term for building muscle or strength because there's simply no specificity there. You are not having that, that normal process of overloading and continuing to get better. So the other thing to understand about specificity is that specificity is remarkably precise. So, if you go bench press at your gym and, you're used to a certain barbell and you're used to a certain kind of weight plate, and then you go to a totally different gym that maybe has, rubber plates instead of iron ones, and maybe they've got a bar that's, a little bit more sort of thin, or maybe it's, got sleeves that are a little bit more lubricated, or, whatever, a little bit more swingy. You might find that you go into this other gym and you do this bench press in this other gym, and it's actually hard for you because your body's not used to it. The stimulus, while it is quite similar, it is still a little bit different, and you might take a couple weeks to sort of, get back into the swing of things where you're feeling like you're doing good again. So specificity applies to basically everything. It applies to, you want to basically use the same equipment over and over again. You want to use the same lifts over and over again. Obviously, there are times when you do need to sort of make changes to your program because you don't just want to be doing the same program repeatedly forever. But the idea of repeating things and, repeating them a little bit better each time is sort of the basic principle of any good exercise program. You're structuring things so that you're doing things repeatedly over a long period of time, as opposed to just doing a bunch of different things and, hoping that sort of gets you the results you want. So this does not mean that you should only train with maximum specificity. So if, my goal is to improve my bench press, that's not saying that the only upper body chest exercise that I should ever do is just my bench press. There are still reasons to use other lifts to sort of supplement the work that you are doing in the bench press. Sometimes when you have a lift, it may sort of, have certain patterns of strengths and weaknesses. And if you're just training it with that one lift over time, then your weak points are going to get, your strengths are going to get stronger, but also your weaknesses are going to get stronger. And so you need to sort of, improve those weak points as well by doing other exercises that sort of help complement those weak points and add to your bench press overall. Generally, high specificity training should be sort of the base of your program. It should be maybe, 50% of the training that you do should be training that's, moderately high specificity. But at the same time, you don't want to make it all specific. If I'm improving bench press, that doesn't mean that I'm just doing bench press constantly day in, day out, because that's how you get overuse injury. Your body doesn't like to do the same things over and over again at the exact same sort of stimulus. So adding in other lifts, okay, maybe some push-ups, maybe some chest press machines, so on, can help you improve because it will basically, A, help protect you against injury, B, it will help, sort of shore up those weak points that you have, and, that's just going to lead to better results in the long term. So you want to make sort of these basic lifts that you're going to repeat that are going to be specific to sort of the demands that you want to be sort of the main building blocks of your program. And then you're going to choose accessories around that just sort of complement that add to that, then instead of replacing those things. So sort of the next principle to understand is overload. So we have, again, how we adapt. We have specificity, which means that you need to be doing sort of the same things over and over again. And then you have overload. So in a general sense, you need to be making your workouts harder over time. So say I want to improve my bench press, and I go in, and I bench press, 135 pounds for 10 reps. And I go in, and the next time I work out and do bench press, I do again 135 pounds for 10 reps. And again, third workout, fourth workout, fifth workout, etc. I'm doing just the same reps and the same weight over and over again. Well, in the beginning, you're going to improve your strength a little bit because, okay, that's something new. You haven't bench pressed before. You're, getting in a workout. But then, because you're doing the exact same work every single time, your body quickly gets used to that adaptation and, used to that stimulus, and it doesn't see a need to adapt any further because all it needs to do is be able to do that 135 for 10. It doesn't need to be able to do 145 for 10. It doesn't need to be able to do 135 for 12. So what you do is over time, you have to be increasing the amount of what we call volume that you're handling. And what that means is that you can be adding sets, you can be adding reps, you can be adding weight. In some way, you need to be making that workout harder in a slow, consistent manner, because that is how you continue, again, to provoke an additional stimulus that, increases the effect that you're getting, and that will continue to cause you to adapt, as opposed to simply adapting a little bit and then sticking at a plateau because you're not doing anything more. So, sort of the most common way that people tend to do overload is they do linear periodization, which is what we call that thing that you do where, okay, I did 135 with 10 this week, so next week I'm going to do 145 with 10. And then the week after that, I'm going to do 155 with 10. And the week after that, I'm going to do 165 with 10. And linear periodization works sort of well for beginners. It's kind of a decent approach. The problem that a lot of people have is simply that it's way too fast. So we have this sort of old myth from, Greece of Milo and the bull, and the idea is that Milo's a strong guy, and he has a calf, and he puts it on his shoulders, he carries it up and down the mountain, and then the next day he does the same thing, and the next day he does the same thing, and as the calf gets bigger and bigger and bigger as it grows, it slowly turns into a bull, and of course at the end of it, Milo is now able to carry a bull up and down the mountain, and so he is now clearly much stronger, and that's sort of an example. That's the example everyone uses in terms of describing linear periodization, linear overload. Now, the problem with that picture is that it, basically when you're increasing your weight very linearly over time, your results are going to slow down because as you get sort of better and better, we have what's called diminishing returns. So basically, the better you get, the harder it is to keep getting better. And so over time, as your results tend to slow down, what you're going to see is that sooner or later, they're going to be slower than whatever speed you're using to add weight onto the bar. And so what's going to happen is sooner or later you're going to hit this wall where suddenly you just can't keep adding weight every week. And that is where a lot of people struggle with linear periodization, simply because they make that line too fast, and then they simply cannot adapt quickly enough sooner or later, and they hit that wall and they crash and they burn and they're just not able to work out anymore. So what happens is that most programs, when you look at what they're doing, they're basically just an intelligent, structured way of slowly adding volume over time in such a way that you are able to adapt to it consistently. And there are sort of these, sort of methods that you can use to cope with the fact that you're going to slow down. There are sort of ways that you can deal with the fact that sooner or later you're not just going to be able to keep adding weight to the bar every single week. So, we'll get into sort of exactly how a lot of people do that, a little bit more in a different episode. But basically, you just need to understand that A, you have overload, you need to be adding to your workouts consistently over time, and B, doing it linearly tends to work out for a little while, but it doesn't work in the long run. So the next principle I'm going to talk about is what we call the repeated Bouts effect. It's also, sometimes called diminishing returns. And I've, just hinted about this a little bit, a second ago. But basically the principle of diminishing returns is that as you overload, yes, you're going to get bigger, you're going to get stronger, you're going to build your endurance, etc. You're going to get more resistant to fatigue, you're going to recover more quickly, you're going to have less and less soreness, but it's a double-edged sword. The more that you improve, the more that you sort of get closer to sort of your theoretical limits in terms of how big and how strong you can get, the harder it is to be to get further. So essentially, okay, it may take you, 1 year of training to get to something like 50, 60% of your potential. 2 years of training, okay, now you're looking at 75, 80, 85% of your potential. 3 years of training, okay, you're at 90% of your potential. 4, 5, 6, 7 years of training, you're at 95% of your potential. A decade or more, maybe now you're getting close to 100% of your potential. It slows down over time. Your progress slows down. And that's because, again, your body needs not just a greater and greater stimulus, but it's going to need a proportionally bigger and bigger stimulus than you're used to. And that means that over time, if you really, really, really want to become the best, you're going to have to sink more and more time into training, and you're going to have to get to a point where, obviously you're sacrificing a little bit more in the rest of your life to get there. And not everyone has to do that. Realistically, it's actually quite easy because of, again, the way that diminishing returns works, to just sort of, get a certain baseline level of fitness in. You're kind of improving a little bit, but you're not really killing yourself trying to, be the strongest or the biggest that you can be. You're just, you're doing some workouts. You've got a relatively well-structured plan, and you're sort of seeing results, but you're not seeing the best results in the world, but you're sort of getting what we call like the 80-20 of getting the best possible return on your time. So a lot of people, I recommend, okay, what is it that you're looking to do? Are you looking to be the biggest, strongest person in the room, or are you just looking to sort of get sort of the the most efficient use of your time, look a little bit better, feel a little bit better, have a little bit more strength, and so on. So, there are sort of people who, okay, it's like I recommend a little bit more of a minimalist approach for them. Okay, they're just, training, 2, 3, 4 times a week. Their workouts aren't too long. They're not really focused on pushing it too quickly, but they do still have, sort of a structured program, and they're focusing on improving little by little. And then you have the people who are, they're really gunning to be the best they can possibly be. And it's like, okay, I want to push you into lots of workouts, 4, 5, 6 a week. We want to be constantly adding volume, a little bit more aggressively. And, like that's how some people are, trying to train. They're trying to be the best they can. But, it takes a lot more out of them because they have to, proportionally put a lot more of their time and effort into this sort of, workout just to, get further results. So here's a pretty good bit from James Clear on sort of the way that your repeated bouts effect works. If nothing changes, nothing is going to change. If you've ever taken a few weeks off from exercise, then completed a strenuous workout, you know what I'm about to say. The first workout back from a long break can be tough, but it's usually the soreness that follows a few days later that is brutal. For example, if you do the squat workout after a few weeks off, it can hurt to simply sit in a chair or climb the stairs later that week. One of the quickest ways to resolve this soreness is very counterintuitive. Squat again. If I'm feeling sore a few days after a squat workout, then doing some light reps is often the quickest way to recover from soreness. I will usually opt for 3 sets of 10 bodyweight squats. The first few are uncomfortable, but then my muscles limber up and I feel significantly better by the end of this. How could this be? If squatting caused the pain, then why would more squatting resolve it? It's sort of like saying I spent too much money, so my solution is to spend a little bit more money. But on the surface, this makes little sense. But as you may expect, there is something deeper going on here. It is called the repeated bout effect, and it applies to much more than just exercise. So this is a really good example of, basically the way the repeated bouts effect works. It's both a positive and a negative. As your body adapts more to exercise, as your body, gets more resistant, gets stronger, it also, that's a great thing. That's sort of just your body adapting at first. But, you're also getting to a point where you need a greater and greater stimulus just to see further results. And so, sort of another sort of takeaway from that is that there are certain, sort of training, methods when you've reached a certain level that may not really do much of anything for you, that would really just sort of be a waste of your time in the gym, that are just going to burn some calories and that's it, and you're going to go home. So, for example, let's say that, in my previous example of using the bench press, I was doing 135 for 10. Now I've gotten a lot stronger. I'm doing 185 for 10, right? But now let's say I go back and I try and do 135 for 10 as my workout for the week. Well, that's going to feel, easy. And not only is it going to feel easy, but because it's easy, my body is not going to further adapt. It's not, it's like, okay, what was the point of that? And in fact, if I just do 135 for 10 for a while, my body is actually going to start adapting downwards. It's going to start getting worse again. And again, that's because, basically having a lot of muscle, having a lot of strength is actually sort of, taxing for your body. It's not going to see a reason to hold on to that muscle if I'm not giving it any kind of stimuli that say that I need this muscle. So over time, if I'm just going to do 135 for 10, it's going to feel easy, and I'm slowly going to get, my strength is slowly going to go down until I'm right back to where I was in the beginning, and then I need to start, pushing it back up again in order to regain strength. So, there are certain kinds of workouts that you can do after you've reached a certain level where it's actually just going to be counterproductive for you. It's actually just not going to do anything for your body simply because your body is used to a greater stimulus, previously, and that whole, just dropping is not going to do anything for you. That doesn't mean that there aren't reasons to, sort of take time off periodically. There are plenty of reasons to do that, and sort of managing your fatigue is sort of a very important factor when you get to be basically when you get to a higher skill level, because there's just so, like, you need to sort of very carefully manage these fitness fatigue variables in order to get the results that you want. So this covers sort of a lot of the basic principles of how working out works, how we get better, and so on. Again, this is not going to give you the precise way that you're going to train, but it should give you the framework within which to understand how programs work and what they are trying to accomplish. And what you can do is you can very often go and look at a program now, and you can say to yourself, okay, how is this program organized? Am I seeing that I am, increasing the difficulty over time? Am I seeing that there is overload within this program? Okay, are there ways that this program is helping me to manage my fatigue? And so on. And if the program is just, sort of violating these basic principles, then you're not going to see consistent results, period. You're going to see some bare minimum level of results. And again, basically everything that you do will burn calories, and that can be good if you're just trying to lose weight, or if you're, if you don't have serious goals in terms of building strength and muscle mass. But if you are looking to actually see, consistent results over time, you need to be sure that your program is following these rules, because if it's not, you're not going to be seeing results. So that is the video for today, everybody. As always, hit that like button, hit that subscribe button, share it with someone that you think might benefit from it. We're going to be having more, parts to this in the future that are going to be covering more and more of the nitty-gritty about how to design your own program. So have a good week, and I will see you all next time.